So as for the question, would I recommend the book? I absolutely would. It's an easy to read romance, but due to the cheesy writing and the spice, I would probably be very considerate as to who I was recommending it to. Hi everyone, my name is Tahereh and today is Tuesday, which means it's time to discuss our Panic at the Book Club book of the week, which is Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. If you like romance, fantasy, or even thriller, basically anything fiction book related, then I suggest you head on over to the channel's intro video, where you can find out more information on how you can take part in this online book club. We announce books at least 4 weeks in advance, and we accept your bookish feedback in a wide manner of ways. Post your comment below a video, send in a voice note, or even send me a short video clip of you discussing the book. Alternatively, you can just send me a direct message. A grumpy small-town barber, a hopelessly romantic runaway bride, equals great big bust-ups, all the tension, and lots of steamy encounters. Escaping her seemingly perfect wedding, Naomi arrives in rough-around-the-edges Knockamount, Virginia, running to the rescue of her estranged twin sister Tina. Too bad for Naomi, her evil twin hasn't changed a bit. After helping herself to Naomi's car and cash, Tina leaves her with something totally unexpected. The 11-year-old niece she never knew she had. Now she's stuck in town with no job, no plan, no home, and a whole lot of extra responsibility. There's a reason that local barber Knox doesn't do complications or high maintenance women, especially the romantic ones. But since Naomi's life imploded right in front of him, the least he can do is help her out of a jam. Then, as soon as she stops getting herself into trouble, he can leave her alone and go back to his peaceful, solitary life. At least that's the plan, until their lives begin to entwine in ways they never imagined. Welcome to the spoiler-free section, where we'll discuss any spoiler-free points before moving on to a clearly marked section of the video which will contain spoilers and more specifics about the book. As always, let's start with those chapter lengths. There were 49 of them, and they're all a fairly reasonable 20 or so minute read. Although some of them were a little shorter, it was fairly consistent throughout. I think it's also worth noting that, especially for a romance, this book was actually quite long. I'm definitely used to them being a short 300 quick page read, but this one was nearly 500 pages or 16 hours on audio. It probably didn't need to be that long as your standard romance, but then again, I'm not really sure what I would have removed. This book was your typical romance, but with quite a bit of spice and twists that were fairly expected. So this problem isn't exactly just with this book, but there are a lot of books out there that, although I love the cover, I really like the design. If a spicy book is going to go with something like that, then I really think that there ought to be some sort of disclaimer. Like, even if it's just something in the first few pages that says that this book is not suitable for those under 18. Like, you can't blame a parent for letting their kid pick up this book because it looks like something a teenager could read, and you can't really expect a parent to read and vet every single book that they want to read, so I think A Curse of Blood and Wolves does a spice warning content on the sleeve of the book, which I really like, and that book doesn't look anywhere near as bright and innocent and inviting to teenagers. I think as spice is getting more and more popular, publishers should be held more accountable and should put more consideration into who might be tempted to pick up their books. Like, this is not suitable for under 18s. The whole book, and not just the spicy scenes, were a little cringy at times. There were a few moments, mostly due to wording choices, that did make me grimace and made me pull out of the story a little bit. Like, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't, Sarah J. Maas using "my bowels turned watery" repeatedly. Nor was it as bad as Penelope Douglas taking family bonding way too far. But there were definitely enough moments where I could understand why some people might have a problem with the writing in this book. Well, although I'm aware that that's something I could ignore unless it's really bad, and I could still enjoy the book, I am also really aware that for some people that is just an immediate turn-off. That being said, I still really enjoyed the book. I liked that there was other stuff going on. I love a grumpy sunshine, and at times, the characters and what they were going through really did feel relatable. If I had to compare this to any other book, it would probably be Anna Huang's King of Wrath or Over the Moon by Tess Waters. I'm not happy with those. I'm gonna just fix this and then come back. Hopefully we can salvage something from this makeup look because that eyeliner did not want to behave. Now we're moving on to that part of the video where I suggest if you haven't read this book yet, go do that first, because beyond this point there will definitely be spoilers. There are a few tropes in this book that I'm not usually a great fan of. For one, the whole new parent thing. But in this book, it was kind of fine because the kid was 11 and wasn't completely reliable on the main character. What I will say is that although the book would expand and go into great detail in some areas, other areas, like anything to do with that social worker, just seem to lack any detail. Like, it'd be brought up because the main character is so worried and stressed out about it, but ultimately it was treated like those details just weren't important. Like, really, it was only used just to show how that main character worried too much. Like, the social worker would just turn up at the most awkward time because, I don't know, some signature was missed on some document or other. Which I guess is fine and not totally unexpected in a romance book, but it did feel a little sloppy. Like, it could have been hashed out a little bit better and made not to feel as obvious. When that main character made the joke about, "will you marry me?" to someone who made a banging cup of coffee, at first it was cute and amusing, and you could really see someone saying that, especially on one of those days, but honestly by the end it felt like she'd asked half the town. Not to mention that the first time she did this, it was like less than 24 hours after leaving a man at the altar. Which, I don't know, kind of feels a little off, like a red flag maybe? I liked the book and I did enjoy the overall storyline. It was easy to read and follow, and for the most part I really did like the characters. I love a single POV and an overprotective love interest, plus I do like it when a romance book has more than just the will they won't they thing going on. But where this book does lose a star for me is mostly in the writing. As I said, that doesn't always bother me, but there were just some parts I couldn't ignore. I also really hate an age gap. Or I suppose I prefer love interests that are in their late 20s or early 30s. And I think she was in her late 20s, but he was like mid 40s or something. Which I guess isn't so bad. I mean, at least it's not Credence, where the main character is only 18 and he's old enough to be your uncle. Like, that just didn't sit right with me. Whereas I guess in this book it's more just down to personal preference. I really liked the ending, and having that less traditional end was really sweet and very fitting for this book. Like, she got guardianship of her niece, she married the guy, and because of problems with conceiving their own children, they adopted their own kids instead. Like, the book is really about this main character's life being turned upside down and not being able to tick things off the list like she had originally planned or felt like they should be. I think the ending was a really nice nod to both of the characters' growth, as well as that inclusion that not everybody can conceive their own children, and just because you can't doesn't mean you don't deserve or can't have that happily ever after. I think it's just something you don't see very often in books, especially romance books, and it fit really nicely. What I will say is that I felt like the main character was a bit of an offensive stereotype. Like, I was half expecting to get a scene where she didn't know how to change her tyre and had to get a strong man in to do it. Like, and although she had all these lists, including her plans for the future, it was get married and start a family. Like, yes, although she had a job, she worked in HR before everything happened, and then she worked in a barn, she helped out in a library. There just didn't ever feel like there was any other ambition. Like, I feel like I could probably have forgiven some of the writing if the main character was more of a strong, independent woman. But again, though, I think that's just mostly down to personal preference. I just really like a strong FMC that doesn't take shit and knows what to do in a crisis. It doesn't mean that the main character wasn't realistic, because I guess there are people like that, and there's a reason that you see these sort of characters all the time in romance novels. It's just that it's not my favourite. But it was a really sweet and enjoyable read. So as for the question, would I recommend the book? I absolutely would. It's an easy to read romance, but due to the cheesy writing and the spice, I would probably be very considerate as to who I was recommending it to. Like, if you're someone who pulls apart writing, isn't a fan of spicy books, and would cringe at the many stereotypes in this book, then I probably wouldn't recommend it to you. So will I be reading any more of Lucy Score? I believe this is a series. I'm not sure who the other books are centered around, presumably some of the other characters in the book, like Nash and Lucian, and although I'll happily read them, I don't think I'll be rushing to get to them. But let me know what you thought. Did you enjoy the book? Next week there'll be no Panic at the Book Club, however we'll be picking back up on the 13th of August with The Serpent and Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. So don't forget to get your comments and thoughts in by Monday the 12th of August at the latest to be a part of the discussion. You can now do this on YouTube, TikTok or Instagram. The following week will be Do No Harm by Jack Jordan. But don't forget, if you do need a little bit longer to read a book, we do now list the next 4 books down below along with the discussion dates. That way you can choose the genre that best suits you and the best time frame to read it in. Thank you all for joining, and if you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, it's always appreciated, and I will see you next week. Bye.